days. Welcome once again to School of God's Economy. We're on day 3, and it's just a joy once again to be your host. I'm Sade Fasedemi, Reverend Sade Fasedemi. I'm recording live right now out of Johannesburg, South Africa, the founder from the Waterfalls. And we've been out here ministering to you all the last 2 days, and we want to say thank you to all of us that are joining in, that are going to be tuning in from different parts of the world, not just today, but those who will also be part of streaming at a later stage. So we welcome all our nations, whether you're joining us at a later stage in any of our nations, whether you're from Southeast Asia, we welcome you. Namaste. Whether you're coming from Russia, from Europe, we welcome you. From the Middle East, we welcome you. Those who are going to come from North America, Canada, United States, we welcome you. And all our Latin America viewers, we welcome you. Australia, but the last but not the least, all our viewers from all over Africa, from Egypt all the way from Cairo, all the way down to South Africa. We thank you, we welcome you, and it's our joy and our pleasure to constantly work with you. All right. So in the last 3 days, we've had a wonderful time. We've had people who's joined in with us on the very first day. We had folks from the US, folks from the UK, from Nigeria, from South Africa, and we've got all so many views so far on from just the first day of coming out to you all. And we're grateful for that. Please send us your feedback as you keep viewing. Let's know what you want to hear, what you want us to do, what more you want us to share with you. All right. And on that note, I'd like to say thank you to those who've joined us and registered to join us privately on the second day. And now today is the third day. So what we had, please do remember, just a little bit of a housekeeping here is if feel free to let us know if you want to join the mentorship program. Kindly scan our QR code and send us a message, and we will definitely get back to you. The second thing is anybody who's registered, please do note that we will be sending you your private links for later replays and additional products, material that we will use for your development and your home additional assignments. So on that note, let's do a quick one. I'm not going to take too long, but a quick review for us to just see what we talked about on the very first day. Okay, so School of God's Economy, the first day we did the intro, but then we did the 7 aspects of God's economy and the 5 habits of God's economy. So that's been good, but we ended up on the first day by making sure everybody identified and located themselves in the spot or their season in their financial situation. So you were either in the famine season, which means you're really at your lowest ebb, or you're in the rainy season where you're living a regular, okay life in your business, in your job, but you could do better, or you are in the due season where you have done it all, you've been a sower, a kingdom financier, but you just know that you need to now operate at a much higher level in terms of your receiving everything that you believe is harvest due to you. And then we moved on to the next day. So on day 2, we delved deeper, okay, and we handled the concept and the principles of owner's reward as well as the joint partnerships. That was quite um, enlightening, to be honest with you. I even learned a few new things in that area after we did the teaching. And then we ended up leaving the day, getting ready for day three. So when it comes to day three, this is what we have packed for you. We have ready for day three. We want to delve into the personal finance environment. Now, the personal finance allows us to take break down how your harvest comes to you. We did a lot of talking about how to sow and how to give, how to make it a habit. We dealt with, the core principles, the four kinds of giving, the three kinds of seeds. I mean, we dealt with virtually everything that will position you now for a life of success in the God in God's economy. However, when God created man, he gave man work to do. So God is going to send our harvest after we have sown our seeds back into our hands through different methods. And productivity is very key because we see in Genesis um, chapter 1, when God made man, immediately after making man, he allowed man to become a member of the working community. He gave man a garden and he said, tend the garden, look after the animals. God gave him a job. He even gave him a job before God gave him a wife. Okay? So his helpmate was supposed to help him, but God first gave him an assignment. And so all of us, as we move into day three curriculum, all of us, we know that we were told, yes, um, uh, God loves us. God has a good plan for us, but He needs us to key into our purpose. So as we key into our purpose and we bring up the 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 text, we need to understand that our God is not obligated to finance us, even when our purpose is not necessary, if we're not running with our purpose. It's required of us that we need to run with our purpose. All right. So now we saw that as we had to get out of debt. That was one of the things that we had to do, and then we moved forward and we had talked about how God's parallel system has absolutely no limits. Okay, and our finances will change forever the minute we understand that it doesn't matter what the system that we're in, as long as we can work God's parallel system and God's economy principles, then we can beat any limitation and any ceiling that we get in any other system of finance or in any other economy that we have been operated in the past. Now that allows us to dream again. And so if we can dream again, we can keep going forward now, you know? So now if we know that we can dream again, we can go to the highest level with God. So, with regards to what we have set up for you today, yesterday we were able to cover the different habits that we needed to adopt, and it was quite nice. And then we talked about the hindrances to God's economy. And now, today, we are going to unpack the bonds and we're going to unpack the habits, so we'll move forward. We've finished the practical habits. If we, okay, maybe let's just go back and just review those practical habits again. So bless you. So we talked about the practical habits and we said that when you have a need, you must always think seed. Keep this as a cycle of growth. We said that you have to develop 1 year out of your life and rewrite history. So if you dedicate 1 year to God's economy, you'll find out that by the time you've done a whole year, you are on a totally different trajectory than you were the year before, because now you've activated God's economy and you're just moving now in a limitless economy. You're moving in a limitless mindset. and you're just going forward, and you just keep going forward, and you just keep going forward. And we talked about how you have to also, I mean, remember the rich young ruler. The rich young ruler and had to, when he was hoarding his wealth, Jesus says, no, why didn't you give to the poor? And go and give everything you've got to the poor. Follow me. So that's just for us to learn that practically giving to the poor is very uppermost in God's heart. So as we go through God's economy and we raise our economic status from lender, a borrower to lender, from we're beneath to being above, or we're being the tail and we're moving to being the head in leadership. We have to always consider the poor, okay? And we remember saying that 100 times of whatever we give in this world, it's promised back to us. God gives to God gives first before he makes a demand from us. And it's a beautiful thing for us to know that. So we don't have to feel grudging whenever we have a need to give or God is making a demand on us. And another thing, as we move on to the next slide, is that Isaiah 55, verse 10 tells us that he gives seed to the sower and bread to the eater, which means we always have to learn that whatever is in our hand represents a harvest given to us by God. We have to take that harvest, separate it, a little bit of a seed that we're going to plant, and then the rest is for bread for eating. However, if we don't carry on that cycle, we will eventually run out of harvest. We will get into financial situations where spending above what God has already placed in our hands, and our seed that we have planted is either has run out of new harvest, or we have not planted, or we have space in the middle of the next harvest. But whatever the case is, Isaiah 55 verse 10 rules. And we also say, remember to name your harvest and keep record of your testimonies. We need the right attitude. It's necessity. Don't give out of necessity or grudgingly, or give cheerfully. Okay. So we've said we'll practice the 21-day program so that we can get into the habit. From the habit, it can become a beautiful lifestyle. We also talked about how we have to practice learning to be obedient and to listen to the Holy Spirit. So every day, as you work God's economy, it's going to help you develop your relationship with Christ, and you learn how to walk smoothly with the Holy Spirit, prompting you, telling you where to go from the left ear or to the right ear. Okay. And then we said we have to keep a thank you list, an Ebenezer list, a list that says, Lord, you did this, then you did that, and you did this, and you did that. And the reason for that list is, first, God wants us to have an attitude of thanksgiving. But the second thing is that God usually uses that thank you list to remind us when we're in the deep season. If life isn't always about the highs. Once you have a high, expect a low. Then you're going to come back again, and then the cycle continues. But whenever you're in a high, be grateful and write things on your list. Because when you're on a low, when you're in a low, in a valley, or in a season that's not so exciting, you will use your thank you list to make yourself stable. So on that note, we're going to move on to the next side where we talked about the hindrances. We have to be tithers because it hinders us. We have to make sure there's unity in the home, otherwise it hinders us. And we have to, as men, all the men on the platform, you need to make sure that you deal with your wives with love and understanding. Otherwise, your prayers will be hindered. And then we said we must make sure that we do not participate in not being grateful. We must make sure that we honor and we are constantly grateful in every direction that's possible. So for today, we're going to go into the practical side. I love this because when we apply God's economy, it allows us to have victory in our finances. So your personal life will have victory financially, you work nicely, and in your business life. The same principles, you'll apply them in your personal life, and then you'll apply them in your business life. Okay. Now, the number one question I like to ask, because I'm a very practical minded person, after we've taught, we now need to take it into the space where we actually practice and live what we are talking. So, how are we going to practice this in our purpose, in our assignments, in our jobs, in our business places? We need to know that according to Mark chapter 4, verse 20, we have to produce 30-fold, 60-fold, and 100-fold. That's the marker for harvest. So you need to be able to quantify anything that God has put in your hand. Have I produced 30-fold with it or 60? And if I've done 60, why stay there? Why not produce 100-fold? Because the higher, the better. And Deuteronomy chapter 1, verse 11 also tells us how God promised the children of Israel. He said he will bless them 1,000 times. So whatever God has promised to the Israelites is also a promise that we can also look forward to as New Testament believers. Why? Because we are of the seed of Abraham and we are grafted into the house of the house of God through Jesus Christ, our Savior and our joint heir with Christ. Now, if I go to number three, I'll talk to you about how we need to have diligent and simple accounting. That's something that you have to get practical about. Earlier on, we said get a journal, okay, so you can record your work. But in that journal, you can even add your financial journal, which says, oh, I sold this. I intentionally did this for say 21 days, and this is what I saw happen. You have an expectancy. So you try and record these things so that after a period of a month, you begin to see what are the patterns that God was showcasing to you. My work is different from yours. Your assignment and mine are different. And the strategy God gives me for my own assignments is going to be different from the strategy that He gives to you for your own assignment. So you have to journal these things because after a while, you start to see the pattern that God uses to work for you. So we have to be diligent and keep simple accounting. You keep inventory lists of all the things that God has placed in your hands. You create your balance sheet, to say, well, this is what I already own, this is what I have, my liabilities, these are my assets, and these are my, future investments. Wherever you are, journal these things, okay? And then uh, you're going to need to learn how to make sure that you're doing your tax declarations on your personal income, okay? Then another practical thing is that you need to make sure that you adopt someone that is a next of kin to you. And we're talking about not just the next of kin that you fill in the form, but we're talking about someone who is very close to you, who you will be able to pass on all the practical codes, if you have passwords on your accounting, passwords to get into your dashboards, passwords to get into your investments. Some investments are open on the net, while some are not, because you need your passwords for your crypto investments, you know, uh, in case anything happens to you, whenever something happens to you and you have to go home, be with the Lord, you will naturally have someone who can kick in less than 24 hours and have access to all the wealth that you will be creating. I normally tell a joke, and I call it my Swiss wife joke, where I describe how some men, you know, they are not open to their wives or to their partners or to their children. And they do a lot of investments that they've locked up in the Swiss account. And what tends to happen is because they have not given anybody else access. And when the time of emergency comes and their loved ones are locked out of access to the investments made by their father or the investments made by their spouse. And the reason is the banking environment allows you only to bring the people that you want to share with your identity. And once you have not brought those people early enough, then when you are no longer able to, they won't release your assets to your loved ones. And that can be a very negative thing. Even simple bank accounts, except you've already shared access to that bank, to the accounts, they will not be able to access what belongs to you, what you need for them, or which you would have wanted to pass on to them. So I always say, when you start your journey in God's economy, you have to get to a point where you understand that you have to share your links. Now, you also need to make sure that you put something in place for your retirement planning. In some countries, it's called 401k, and in some other countries, every nation has a program of financial a delegation of retirement planning. So make sure that you put something in place on a practical basis. However, there's a possibility that you can grow your wealth to a point where even your retirement plan is no longer relevant because you've got a whole lot more income coming in for you from the wealth that you have created. Now, we also have um, the need for you to know that one of the practical things is that when you develop your wealth to a certain level, you will get to a point where you can also develop your family estate plan well ahead of time so that you have it in place and you have a last will and testament also in place for your family members at the point of your exit. So yeah, I think we've done a lot of talking. Can we just take a little break? I can see right here that those, as we move on to the next slide, I can see all those joining us. Some people are coming from the US. We see South Africa. We see, yeah, so we have two countries in-house tonight. And yeah, thank you all of everybody for coming. Thank you. We see some of our partners. We see some of our members. We see some of the Waterfalls family members all coming in. Thank you so much for joining us. Send us a message. Let's know whether you're having a good time. Let's know if there's any question that you've got at a later stage. You can always reveal it to us. Yes. So I want to take us in to start discussing about bonds and rats. Now, you can see that beautiful picture right there. There are two scriptures that I'm going to use to explain this concept. In the Old Testament, in the Bible days, the old community was an agrarian community, which means they made a lot of their money by going out as farmers. And anytime you have farming, the farming, the farm will always have access to either a barn where you can bring in the the hard grains in for storage and processing, or they will also have what we call vats, which are these big containers for liquid products. So in those days, they would have barns for your corn, your grains, for your barley, for your wheat, and then they would also have the vats for collecting either their olive oil produce or for collecting their grape produce. And then from there, the processing is done until it's packaged and ready for sales to the buying community. Now, Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 2 says, The Lord will command the blessing upon you into your barns and in all that you put your hand to, and he will bless you in the land which the Lord your God gives you. Which means all of us, at some point in time, we are going to receive a land that we have to work. So God says, I will bless the work of your hands. I will fill up your barns, which means if you're a farmer, God is going to bless you in such a way that your barns are filled up with plenty. The second scripture there is Proverbs chapter 3, verse 9. And there, Proverbs says, honor the Lord with your wealth, with the first fruits of all your crops. Then your barns will be filled to overflowing, and your vats will brim over with new wine. So you can see right there in Proverbs 3, verse 9 to 10. God is saying right there that when you honor the Lord with your substance, when you honor the Lord with your wealth, He'll give to you the the he'll fill up your barns, which means your harvest will be big, which means you need a container, you need a a a barn to contain your harvest. The one thing I need to say straight away is that a barn has a certain capacity. Okay, then the vats also will overflow with new wine. All right, so it also has capacity. So I want to showcase to us on a practical basis that every day that we live, that every day that we operate, we need to be bringing in our harvest into a barn or bringing in our harvest into a vat. Now, the barn represents the more solid things, okay? The grains, as we move on to the next slide, it represents the grains, it represents the hard, coarse stuff, while the vats will now represent the liquid the liquid kind of fruits. So when we talk about the vats, the barns, I beg your pardon, there are different kinds of barns that are available for us. Okay. The very first one is the barn of your business. In regular terms, anytime you want to harvest, if God has given you the wherewithal or desire to start a business, to make money, for profit generating, then you need to establish a kind of business. Now, what kind of business? It will depend on who you are. It will depend on the gifts that you got. It will depend on your assignment. It will depend on the opportunities that are coming to your direction, you know. But a business is a place where you trade goods and services for the benefit of profit generating. And I like to usually highlight to people, especially small, micro enterprise business people, that when we are talking about business, A business must generate profit. A business cannot be a place where when the money comes, you're just eating it up and you're just using it and you're using it. You have to keep funding a business and at the end of the day, see where is your profit. And your profit is what you have access to, not the returns from the business. The second kind of barn are the barns of property. This is where you generate income by owning property, by buying, procuring property that is income generating. So you grow you can get your harvest by your property bringing in cash flow, okay, or by your property growing in capital. So if the capital is appreciating, that's also a source of harvest for you. Some people make a harvest through publications. Some of us we write books. I showed the Get Mentored book. We write books. So those books will cost you once. Your publications will generate royalty income for you at the end of the day. Then another kind of barn that you need to look out for are your bank accounts. Okay. Sometimes some of us, depending on what we're doing, we need to open up appropriate bank accounts to suit us for our harvest, which means you will open up your personal bank account. Okay. Then you open up your savings account. Then you open up your investment account. All right. And then you will open up your business account and your maybe your credit card accounts. But all those need to be well managed so that you can see that you're progressing forward and you're not just losing out money as your income comes in. All right. Another ban, but one thing we need to see is that we have to always be ready to scale our van in readiness for our expectation. So if I'm expecting $1 million, I'm not going to leave. I'm going to go beyond opening a savings account. I'm not going to expect to manage $1 million in a savings account. By the time you're talking about a million, you now need to have a proper investment account, proper term account, a proper private banking account, an appropriate account for what is happening to your harvest. Okay. Then, because you need to be ready when God is working with you, opportunities will come and you need to be all set. You know, they always say that opportunity comes to those who are ready. So you create your bands ready so that when the opportunity comes, it's easy for you to flow. Then we have other kinds of bands like your investments, all right, your interest bearing accounts, your term accounts, your mutual fund accounts in your money market, mutual funds, investments, and those kind or anything in the money market, those are bonds that you put in small amount and you get it compounding interest. You get the compounding interest to build your investment to a very high level. So when you're dealing with investments, you need to know a wealth is created by investing in in wealth creating products that compound interest. But the best income comes after you compounded your interest. It's not just, oh, I leave it, I put my money in and I take it out. No, you have to also be able to allocate investments for long term. So we're talking about compounding your savings for a 3 year period, a 5 year period, a 7 year period, or you will even have something that you're compounding for a 10 or 15 year period, because that is where all the millions come out of. And then we have also bonds that come from uh, uh, um, uh, investments in shares, public listed shares, where at the end of your investment, you get paid your dividends and your profit share. And you also have private equity. Now, private equity is actually the highest uh, returns for investment. So any opportunity where you got the chance to invest in private equity for businesses, then it's also good for established businesses. It's also a very good option. But those are things that you need to look out for. So when these opportunities are being spoken about around you, you are not just ignorant to just say, "Oh, I've sown my seed to God." No, when you sow your seed to God, God will throw back that harvest through an opportunity to invest in a business, to invest in shares, to invest in on the money market, to invest in the stock market, to invest in trusts, to collaborate with people or to invest in property. So whatever opportunities are around you, we have to go and start to learn because when you don't understand about the different asset classes and you don't understand the different methods in which wealth is generated, the opportunities can come and pass you by. But we thank God that we will be led by the Holy Spirit. So as long as we keep sowing our seeds and making God consider us for wealth creation, He will open up new opportunities for us. And then the final one, when it comes to the barn, is I like to talk about the four streams of income. We take this as out of the Garden of Eden, where God created a one river, and out of that river, the river divided into four river heads to supply them and to empower Adam to grow and multiply and go beyond the Garden of Eden wherever it was needed. Now, when we describe the four streams of income, we always say the first stream of income is through a job, which means you go and work for somebody, you're working for someone. Then the second kind is where you are working for yourself. You're working for yourself as a professional. You pay yourself because all the money has to be made by you. Maybe you're a doctor, you have a practice. Maybe you're an accountant, you have your own practice. Maybe you're a lawyer, you have your legal firm, and you're the only lawyer there, and you have to do all the billings and everything by yourself. Okay, so that's also, or you're a trainer, you're a coach, and you just work for yourself. This third type is when you work with when other people work for you. You're working in a system, and that system can work and operate with or without you. So if you go on a holiday and you're in an organization where you've hired other lawyers or you hired other doctors or you've hired other professionals that can work alongside with you, so other people are working to help you make your money. Sometimes it's in a networking community. In the crypto community, in the crypto world, you develop a community. In the foreign exchange environment and the brokerage environment, you develop a community of brokers, you develop a community of investors. So when you need to make money, the money is coming in from different people, not just you, the work that you are doing. Then the fourth one is the stream where your investments, your money just works for you, which means who have invested in a property, have paid up that property, and that property is now generating income every month. That's where your money is working for you. You don't have to, you can get to a point where all your investments are now generating a cash flow and you live off that cash flow, and all your work as an investor is just to manage the the assets that you have invested in. So that, in a nutshell, are some of the bonds that we have. Okay, and there's a lot more also in terms of avenues in which God can bring in money, but I've virtually listed the core that is applicable to most economies and communities that we operate with. Now, going forward, let's just talk about VATs. There is VATs to me are like the oil the olive oil, the oil, the grape, which is the juicy, you use grapes to manufacture wine. You use the oil, the olive oil, olive fruit harvest to generate oil. Oil for drinking, oil for uh, uh, powering up for energy, oil for cooking, oil for different a variety of uses. But that is processed. Now, I want to compare and say when you look at the vats, it reminds me of when you sow a seed to God or you do something positive and God blesses you with ideas. God gives you concepts and God gives you insights. Now you can see we're sitting at School of God's economy now. We've been running this school since 2019. But that's because God has been giving me all the ideas, all the concepts. He's given me a lot of insights into God's economy. So I'm able to put a program together and I can have this because I have lots of insights into the area of finance from the perspective of God's economy. Sometimes God will just give you great ideas, okay? And you can get innovative. This is where innovation comes. So some people, if you always wondered if there's innovation within you, you discover innovation as you run your race, as you walk the journey of God's economy. God begins to release business ideas. They will overflow in your mind. You go to sleep, you wake up, you see things, and all of a sudden your spirit is quickened up to say, no, why can't I do this? I remember sometime I did a trip and I traveled and I came back from Asia. And the first thing I saw was a need to manufacture something that had my own name on it. And immediately, because of my inspiration from watching how the Asians just manufactured everything, they had an idea. If there was a problem that someone experienced, there's somebody who has created a product for it. So while I was in Asia, I had the ability to see so many products that are not generally used in many societies. If you were on a motorbike, there was a screen to cover your face. Never seen it in other countries. If you were sitting down somewhere, somebody would create a product that would cover your legs. If you were eating, somebody would create a product that would allow you to have ease. So there were different innovative products that were being used on a day by day basis. Now, that is the kind of inspiration God will give to you as you run the race. Now, God will also open you up to new opportunities. Okay? So there are times when some things are new and you didn't, you couldn't even imagine. You just stumble into a new opportunity. And that new opportunity now creates for you an income stream that helps you to generate wealth. So there are times when some things have been existing all around, but you were never aware of it. But somehow God just connects you all of a sudden. I remember a story that was told by Dr. Jerry Savelle, Dr. Jesse Duplantis. He mentioned about how God opened him up to an opportunity and he used that. He missed the opportunity, but he now used it to learn how not to miss new opportunities. A friend of his just was driving on a highway, and on that highway, he saw a piece of land. And the Lord just told that friend of his to go and buy that piece of land. And so the guy asked and found out that the piece of land was going to cost 3,000 US dollars. So he approached two other friends, which included Doctor. Jesse Duplantis. And Dr. Jesse Duplantis said, no, 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 this is not a good thing. He didn't like the idea, so he didn't invest. However, his friend carried on and invested the $3,000. Very shortly after that, the government approached his friend and offered to buy that property for $300,000. That guy got a hundredfold return. Now, how many times is God bringing new opportunities to us and we're letting it go over our heads? So just once you're in God's economy, sow seeds and say, Lord, I've missed out on this opportunity. I missed out on that opportunity. This came and went. I lost that era. I missed out on this era. The era of tech, the era of e-commerce, the era of mining, the era, whatever that era is. Take a seed and go and sow it and say, in my new era, this new era, there is something for me. And God will use it to streamline new opportunities for you. Okay. The third kind of ideas, concepts, and insights is that God gives you overflow with breakthrough pioneering. Now, if you look at the Israelis, they are the world's capital of breakthrough engineering and pioneering. They have new products, they've got new concepts, they've got new innovation. They are virtually the innovation capital of the world. They have all kinds of patents that they've generated, and they virtually turned the the desert environment using technology to create a green field. So that's the kind of thing that will happen to you. So if you are that way inclined, let God sow a seed. If you are an engineer or you've got you know how to conceptualize, or you know how to ideate, ask God, give me a breakthrough pioneering, something that will allow me to write my name in history, to change my society, to change my community, to give a breakthrough for my entire family. Okay. Then the fourth kind of ideas, concepts, and insights that I like is when God gives you a first mover's advantage. You're not the one with the business idea. You're not the one with the new opportunity. You're not the one who is the creative innovator. However, when those opportunities come to the market, there are a few people who will first come on board. They are the ones who are given what we call the first movers advantage. Sometimes it's not open to the general community, it's just open to a few people who have the ability to come on board, invest, and maximize the opportunity. And then when things are looking very good, oh, thank you so much for that. We like your feedback. I'm being so greatly blessed. Thank you, Reverend Shadi. Thank you so much also um, for being a part of this program. It blesses my heart. So when God now has used the few of you with the first mover's advantage and you've been blessed, it will now become open to the general public. However, the general public will now come, but they can't catch up with those of us who had the first movers advantage. So I always say to people at the School of God's Economy, never ever say no until you have looked deeply. Just because something is new does not mean that there is no advantage in it. It can have a high level of risk because it's not very well proven, it's not a tried and tested environment. However, If you do your little research and your little due diligence, and you check in your spirit to see if God can give you peace, then trust the system and do your investment. I've had the opportunity to do that before, and I've got a new opportunity while I'm doing that right now again. And I'm so grateful to God because I know that when God gives you the first mover's advantage, it doesn't always look so rosy. There are always lots of queries. There are always lots of questions. You are half and half. You believe the future. But if you ride the wave of God, you find out that there is more in store for you than you can ever imagine in the first mover's advantage. Yeah. So as we move on to let's just take the next one. So now that we've talked about the vats and we've talked about the barns, I want all of us to make sure that we are doing our very best. We are doing our very best to operate in God's economy, but from a very practical perspective. So, for going forward, we'll be bringing in more products, we'll be bringing in more materials just to help you take on the practical angle of investments so that you learn more details about wealth creation. You know how to create trajectory for yourself from being somebody who maybe you were in debt and you move from being in debt to somebody who is now paying off your debt. Then you pay off your debt, your credit cards. You now start using your credit card to serve you, not that you are serving the credit card provider. Then you move to the next level where you now create your savings. And you are now savings. You are creating your savings. Usually they say create your first 1 month of savings and lock it away where you don't touch it. And then you go to the next level. You now create savings again for enough for 3 months. And you also lock that away. Then you start to put away investments. Oh, now the investments will look after your long-term program. So while you are productive, don't let's go into a lifetime of just spending everything that comes. Yes, we are Christians and we have to give money to lots of godly purposes. But while we are doing that, we also need God to lead us to put the right investments in creating any barn that will open up income stream, annuity income, passive income, those kinds of income. And then we have to get into the world. Believers, we don't operate a lot of us in that environment. But the environment of wealth is the environment where funds and money is growing in compounding interest. For those who have registered, I am going to set up a compounding interest exercise with us, just so that you can have a good eye opener to what lies ahead of us in the future if we understand this concept. This is the concept that wealth is founded upon. However, unfortunately, not a lot of people understand that concept. Many people understand the concept of saving, but saving never creates wealth. It creates prosperity, it creates a good life, it helps us, it creates a balance, but it doesn't create generational and lasting wealth. What creates generational and lasting wealth is the concept of compounding interest. So at a later stage, we'll go into that and we'll make that available for our participants um, going forward. But right now, before we depart for tonight, let's just go through the resources that will help you going forward. These are some of the resources that I used in my life when I was digging deep and getting all kinds of insights that allowed me to create this productive curriculum. It also allowed me to also create the book, Get Mentored, which I use now to mentor people and to help people who want to learn how to mentor others. And that is how we keep the circle going. We keep the circle going, you know. I learned from a lot of my mentors, and now I was mentored, and that allowed me to have a successful path in life. And because I have been mentored, I also desire for others to mentor others and keep the circle going, teach you how to mentor other people. Now, when it comes to the first resource that I'd like to look at, it's the fact that in the productive environment in the Bible, in the spiritual environment, our strengths are different from the strengths that are needed for productivity in the business world, in the wealth creation world. In the Bible, God gives us the gifts of the Holy Spirit, so you are able to have the gift of uh, word of knowledge, or you have the gift of the word of wisdom, or you have the gift of gift of faith, or you have the gift of speaking in tongues, the gift of interpreting diverse tongues, you have the gift of healing, the gift of miracles, or you have the gift of prophecy. Now, those are spiritual gifts that are given to us. All right. However, when it comes to being able to go into the marketplace to operate and generate income with whichever kind, whichever one of the four income streams we're trying to generate, we need certain strengths. And the strengths that we have will allow us to operate appropriately. However, in life, as you grow, it takes a long time to identify and understand your strengths. So, what tends to happen is that you stumble into your strengths after 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 6 years. There's some strengths you don't even quite understand so well that you could have wasted about 10 years of your life, you know, being in the productivity environment, not even knowing your core strengths. That is why it is important that we go online and we go and take this strengths test. It's a book. It's a know your strength. It's a book written Discover Your Strengths. It's a book written by Marcus Buckingham and Donald Clifton. So those who are watching right now, I want you to do a screen print so that you can save this page and you can go and do a lot of work on it at a later stage. The first time I did my strengths test, I discovered in the strengths tests, they'll allow you to discover which of the 34 productivity strengths are more relevant to you. So they'll scale it and rank it. And when I saw my strengths, the first five rankings showed that I was always going to be a learner. I was always going to be a thinker. I was always going to be somebody who what they call ideation, who develops ideas, and I would always be somebody who develops other people. And finally, I would be somebody who would convene. I would always regularly or periodically need to convene people together. So when I learned that that was my five core skills, core strengths, I started to apply it in a job. So I didn't allow myself to do a job or be hired for a job that did not require me to use my five skills, my five strengths, because that is the area in which my genius can emerge. That's the area in which my cognitive development can just rise to the highest. level. So when I learned that, I found it totally um, irresistible. And so I've incorporated that into my coaching sessions as well. So I help people when we coach them to identify their strengths. And when they identify their strengths, we now tell them how it can be applied. Then the second book that I also totally recommend, you can try and look for it on Amazon .com or in any of the bookshops, is a book that was written years ago by Dr. Caroline Leaf, and he partnered with Ray Macaulay. The two of them wrote this book that says, "Who switched off my brain? The gift within." Now, the core of that book is that that book helps you to understand that there are seven intelligences, and each of those intelligences apply to each individual the most. So you will have like top two of your intelligences. Once you identify your intelligences, it shows you the manner in which your brain works the best. So in some of those intelligences, you find out that some of us we work with numbers, so we're mathematically oriented. Some of us are word oriented. When we read a word, or we hear, or we see a word, it allows our brain to remember at a better level. Some people identify with music. Okay, so it doesn't matter how you want them to operate, they need music in the background, and it will bring out the best out of them. Some people operate spatially, which means they need to see designs, they need to see concepts that are put in forms of graphics and colors. So you see, that is how their brain works. And that's why you find out that whenever we're doing our school, we tend to put that in place so that there's the graphics for those whose brains will operate the best because of this. Some people, it is what they hear, while some people, it is what they see. And some people, they operate best, their brain will operate best in what we call the in in their interpersonal, which means for their brain to operate at its highest level, they need to have a lot of people around them. Okay, so you find out these people like to do work in groups. They don't like anything that makes them solo. They always want to be in a group session. They want to be in a committee. They want to develop everything. They need to hear the idea coming from everybody. They'll put the concept together, merge it, and have a very brilliant outcome. However, there are some people, they are not interpersonal. They are interpersonal, which means they always need me time. Their brain works the best when they're on their own and they can do their own thinking, they can do their own analysis, they can form their own ideas. I am that kind of person. So you can understand when my strengths are very strong in the area of thinking time, learning time, and the time of ideation. Ideation is not something you do openly in public with a lot of notes. Ideation is something you have to do in your own private space. Then, yeah, so then there's also there are about two other strengths, as I mean areas of intelligences for those who are very prone to work with animals, or people who are prone to work with plants. You'll see some people, they are described as people who have green fingers, people in agriculture. They can just tell nature like that. They can tell when the sun is coming, where the plants are. And then some, they're animal oriented. And those animal oriented people, they become people like we say, when we say there's a dog whisper or a horse whisper, and you wonder, how can you be so in tune to an animal? It's an intelligence. It's the way their brain is developed and the way their brain operates at its maximum. Okay. So on that note, we've given you all the products that you can work with. Okay. We'll also forward what I call the purpose transition a chart to you so that you can have a look at it. And that's where we always, and then there's a video for you to look at. So when you take on all the assignments that we've given there, the tools that we've made available there for you, you'll be able to work well. You'll be able to, you'll never ever be the same again. You don't just listen to what we have said. Listen to what we have said. Write it out, practice it, and teach somebody else. Who knows? You may be the one who will now start creating your own God's economy curriculum. So, on that note, I want to say thank you for those who have joined us. It's been a nice journey. We've done day one, day two, day three. Day three is a whole lot easier. So, I just want to say thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, yes, yes. Send your emojis, then let us know how you feel. In our conclusion, we're just going to say to you, yes, thank you, Ambassador Prudence. We see everybody coming on board. Dr. Bola from America, Angela from Secunda, Pastor Busi from Secunda, Joy Ajibade, Johannesburg, Minister Mulalo. Okay, and then we have Miss Cynthia is on board, Temi is on board, Sepi, Mutlala. Sorry? And we have Zambia. Oh my goodness, Zambia is in the house. Well done. So we've got a couple of countries that have joined in over the last 3 days. So we trust that as we roll the next School of God, we try to do one every quarter. But now that we can see that we have gone virtual, there's a likelihood we'll be able to do it a whole lot more than a whole lot more frequently. But whatever the case is, please feel free, get onto our YouTube. If you're not subscribed yet, please subscribe to be a member of the Waterfalls family, and let's know what you're thinking, what you're looking out for. We also have the QR code, the very back there. Please scan it if you want to join our WhatsApp community because we'll be doing a lot of communication in there. So, on that note, in conclusion, Jesus says, you did not choose yourself. I chose you that your fruit, that your fruit may abound and that you may be fruitful. So God wants us to be fruitful. So go ahead, exercise your God's economy and be fruitful, but do beyond being fruitful. Let your fruit abound, which means your fruit must go beyond yourself. You must also bring other people and develop other people alongside with you. So, on that note, thank you very much. Have a great evening. We look forward to seeing you at another time. Send in your questions. You've been greatly blessed, and we're grateful to God. Send in all your questions, and we will be sure to answer and send them back to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. God bless.
Wants to do a review? Anybody wants to say something? We can unmute everybody. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's been an honor to have shared this last hour and plus with you all. God bless you all and have a great weekend.